The Top Knot Creative Show, the Top Knot Creative Show. Seeking super smart, super talented superheroes. How to be wow over the world and all around. The Top Knot Creative Show, the Top Knot Creative Show.
Hello everyone, this is Shantae Schrader and welcome to the show where we seek out the super smart, super talented, and basically the superheroes who are taking over the world and making it super wow. Today we are talking with Tiffany Peterson. Tiffany is the founder and owner of the company The Lighthouse Principles. Tiffany is a seasoned speaker and international coach, guiding individuals, organizations, and audiences in creating thriving lives and business results. Before founding her own company, The Lighthouse Principles, Tiffany worked with and for many popular brands, including Franklin Covey, where we know the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the world-famous Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, Jack Canfield, creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and she's been responsible for managing and achieving sales budgets that range up to $40 million in annual revenue. She loves sharing her sales secrets and strategies with others to help them create a sustainable income, living their business dreams, and this is something that we all find important and we all probably have a hard time talking about, which is money and sales and selling ourselves. So couldn't be more excited to have Tiffany on the show. Tiffany, thank you for joining us today.
Shantae, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure truly to be here and part of such a delicious conversation.
I love that, delicious. Let's first talk about, before it is that you started working for these huge companies, huge brands, huge budgets, and kind of taking care of, $40 million in annual revenue. What led to that for you and that career path?
Yeah, so I had started out in the training development industry. I worked for a smaller firm before I went to work for Franklin Covey Coaching, and just starting out in really just basic kind of sales experience. And I knew I had a teacher vibe within me, because when I first went to school, I thought I was going to be a special education teacher. That's what I was studying. So I moved into training development in that space, and I fell in love with education, but helping adults and teams and individuals in business have ahas and awarenesses that then went on to impact them. So I went on to work for Franklin Covey Coaching in a sales position and had the experience where I wasn't great at sales, candidly, Shantae, when I started. I wasn't great at it, and I don't think any one of us, the reason why sometimes we struggle with sales as adults is because when we were children, none of us thought, or majority of us, I would assume, 99% of us did not think, gosh, when I grow up, I hope I'm a salesperson. And our parents didn't think that either. Our parents weren't thinking, gosh, I sure hope when Tiffany grows up, she gets into sales. No, our parents were thinking much more noble things, like that be teachers and doctors and physicists and astronauts and things like that. And so the reason why there's a lot of sales resistance is because when you often ask people what they identify with being in sales, it's typically negative associations, things like being pushy and aggressive and manipulative and schmoozy and dishonest, and we just often don't think of, and we often, likely then sales was kind of the leftovers for people that couldn't do, quote, a real career, right? Mm-hmm. Not realizing that sales is a part of everything. So myself, I went through my own journey. When I went to work for Franklin Covey, I did that because I was so drawn to his content and the principle-based teaching that he was about. And so when I first started selling for him, I remember having that thought of, I did not, this is, my first year out of college, thinking, I did not go to school to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. I just signed up for the dregs of society, right? Mm-hmm. And as I have come to learn since then, that really being great at sales is being great at relationships, great at asking versus talking, great at service, great at customer support, great at, just treating people well, being great at relationships as well as then being great at questions. So I started out at Franklin Covey Coaching and very novice to sales and selling, but I was sure passionate and I was willing to work hard. And because I was so passionate about the product, there's this thought by Wayne Dyer where he says, fall in love with what you're selling and then sell your love. And I was so passionate about the power of personal development and having someone selling coaching programs, work with an individual for a period of time to help them apply the concepts. I saw what that did to people's lives, to their health, their relationships, their bank accounts. So with a little bit of time, I became a top salesperson, and their first female actually to be in what they call their top 10, which is an annual, once-a-year recognition. It was pretty much a boys' club when I went to work there. I mean, there was about maybe 10 women out of 120 sales reps, and so that was my path. Is I didn't start out thinking I was going to be in sales, like probably most people, and even had my own resistance to it because it didn't feel noble and great. It felt, kind of like, oh my gosh, who wants to be in sales? I want to change the world and help people. But the irony is that, when you think about someone like a Mother Teresa, we wouldn't label her as a salesperson. We'd label her as a philanthropist or a humanitarian or a saint. Mm-hmm. She was a masterful saleswoman. She was always asking people for money, to the millions and millions of dollars, to support her cause. So it's really having first a mindset shift, and then we also work on skill. But my path then was similar with probably many of you, where you learn that life is sales, and your skills of communication, skills of influence, your skills in relationships, your network. And so with time, after I had this great experience there and went on to have several awards and recognition, that led me down the path that they asked me to start teaching classes. And with time, I was then their corporate trainer for their sales department. And then after a little while of that, a few years, I then went out and launched my own company about 3.5 years ago. So that's kind of my path with, definitely some awareness and insights about how now when I teach others, I help them create the self-esteem and sales skill set to create a thriving business. And being great at sales requires us to first look at that mindset and maybe the limiting beliefs or the fears that come up around being in sales. It's just about, hey, you want to change more lives and touch more people. It's about that, like you mentioned in your language, passion and profit. You've got to have both, because if you aren't making a profit, you won't be able to sustain the message or service that you're so passionate about sharing.
Mm-hmm. No, so I love everything that you just said. I love the fall in love with what you're selling and then sell your love. That makes just like that shift in perspective, and that idea that we all are selling something almost all the time. We've taken the negative out of that, so why not apply that here? Now, your platform, the Lighthouse Principles, you talk about serve more to sell more. When you launched your company, was that very much what you knew it would be at the time?
No, I think with time, things get refined. I didn't have the language. I had the same heart, mm-hmm. if that makes sense, and the same energy about it, about wanting to help people change their lives, grow confidence, self-esteem, and also, and some of that of helping them grow their business. But it was definitely the heart piece that was leading, in terms of I just didn't always have the languaging to it. And truthfully, in the very beginning, I was definitely more life coaching oriented, because there was part of me, I didn't want to be identified as a sales coach or mm-hmm. sales trainer, even though I had this multiple seven-figure background in it. Again, I was still working through, I think, some of that process of I wanted to change the world and help people follow their dreams and their goals, and not owning that part of myself, that the thing you can do in your sleep, right, which is teach people how to be more effective with selling. Is I became aware clearly as every time I would start to speak about sales, people would light up and they'd say, we want more of that, we need more of that, because that was the piece they were missing. Mm-hmm. And that kind of helped then facilitate me to look at, why do I kind of hide that? Or not even, it wasn't that I hid it, it was more just I wasn't promoting that. And so now it's really both. It isn't one or the other. I'm not all sales and I'm not all success coaching. Mm-hmm. It's a hybrid, because being great and being a thriving entrepreneur, or getting your message out there, or writing a book, or your artwork, or whatever it might be, it's both your passion and, as you said, profit. It's having both that mindset and the skill to be able to put forth your gifts on a larger level.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I, here at Top Knot, we're all about how to be wow, and it's kind of like because you already are. And what comes into that is that that funny little thing called self-esteem. Let's deconstruct that a little bit. And, you know, what's your perspective when someone says self-esteem? What is that, and what does it mean as far as being a good salesperson?
Yeah, I love that. I think because, you know, self-esteem to me, instantly what comes up is our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves. But we're choosing what we, and a lot of times it's just even subconscious. It's not awareness to it. It's, we just believe that we are what we are and we deserve what we deserve. And for some people that's, well, higher, and for some people it's lower. But it's really the combination of belief systems that are dictating the outcomes of your life. I mean, I remember an early mentor of mine, and this is before I'd done any real personal development. When I very first went to work for Franklin Covey Coaching, my sales trainer of our, you know, training class said, "You will perform to your self-esteem." And truthfully, Shantae, at the time, I thought that, yeah, and you say, wow, now, but at the time, I was kind of like, what's he talking about? Like, that is psychopathic talk. Like, what? Yeah. Because I wasn't aware of, we all do have a certain, a comfort zone or a temperature, a financial temperature even, of what will allow into our life. A temperature of how much love, how much publicity, attention, how much intimacy, how much connection, how much income, you know, that we allow in is at some degree of what we feel worthy, deserving of, or what's familiar to us. And so when he said that, you will perform to your self-esteem, that, obviously, I remembered it because I'm repeating it to you 12 years later, but at the time, I was like, what is he even talking about? And then I watched myself live the teaching, and what that looked like is prior to working there, the most amount of money I'd ever made was about $30,000 a year in income. And, you know, I was 25 at the time, and I didn't have bills, and many bills. I mean, I maybe needed to make about $800 a month. I didn't, you know, so for me, making much more, I didn't need to make more than that. I didn't have credit card debt, and gratefully my parents paid for my schooling. I'd paid for rent and books and gas and food and things. But, you know, I just was really in this position where I didn't need, quote, to make a lot of money. And so I ramped up pretty quickly because, again, I had this passion and I had the work ethic, which those are two key ingredients to being successful at anything, right? And so here I was, always in the top echelon in terms of performance of stats and numbers. So pretty quickly my results, my sales started to mirror that. And I started to make as much money as I used to make in a month, I was now making in a week. And that was fine for a little bit, but I hit a comfort zone wall, that upper limit. There's a fabulous book I recommend everyone, all my private clients read it as part of their curriculum when we work together. It's a book called The Big Leap, L-E-A-P, by Gay Hendricks. You can find that on Amazon. And he talks about how we all have an upper limit problem. And it's so fascinating is that material teaches in a beautiful way of how we have a certain, what's again like a financial temperature. So here I was, ramping up. I started making as much money. My monthly income starts becoming my weekly income. That means I'm on track to quadruple my income, which I pretty much did in that first year. But I first hit some stumbling blocks and things because it was freaking me out. Again, we all have an awareness. Like, whatever you might think is a lot of money might be a little or a lot of money. It's all based on perspective and how you're raised. And, I mean, money is, we could do an entire call just on money, about belief systems. But the point being is, until I was willing to go to work on you will perform to your self-esteem, that played out very true for me, where I ramped up real quick and started making great money and great performance, and then I hit that wall and started procrastinating and kind of letting off the gas and chatting a lot more and being inconsistent, which then I was frustrated with myself because work ethic was never the problem. So I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It was a great path of self-growth. But yeah, I think, so when you look at self-esteem, it's at the core of everything that we're attracting or repelling in our lives. And the good news, though, about self-esteem is it's a choice and it's a habit. So it's not something you either have or don't have, and you either were born with, like blue eyes or green eyes, and then you just either had them or you don't. It's something that you can make a decision to say, I'm going to choose to have great self-esteem. And there's a few habits and things that I teach that others, there are ways that you can go about building that as almost like a muscle. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, this is a juicy topic.
I love, I love the idea of it is just a habit, and sometimes that self-awareness is really hard to come by. So I'm seeing more and more where having a coach is going to be the way to take yourself to the next level. I've had multiple coaches, and I've tried, usually it's been after I've been exasperated by my own, trying to figure it out on my own, and then meeting with them, and within, a week's time, I progressed quicker. I've up-leveled about 10 levels, and I'm thinking, I think that is what we are to each other, is we are, we offer the accountability. We also, you offer the expertise that you may not feel like I'm light years ahead, but you are ahead of someone that you're working with, and you can help bridge that gap. And, learning, often I think you can learn a couple ways. One, you can learn by your own mistakes, or you can learn by your mentors. And I imagine the mentors, you bypass a few bruises. You can kind of fast track. So, I mean, I love that way of being able to say this is about, it's your self-esteem. And you can feel it too. I mean, as you're saying this, I'm realizing moments that I've felt that the procrastination, which is a symptom of that. So, I mean, really, is that kind of how you're able to coach people? Is just you're able to kind of witness what it is and then say, here, let's look here.
Yeah. Well, for instance, I'll give you a very tangible thing, because sometimes when we talk about, great, I need self-esteem, I need to build it, it's now how do I do that, rather than staying in just theoretical, is there's an exercise all of my clients implement, and whether they're private or group coaching clients. And it's one example is what's called the morning ritual. And you've probably heard of, a lot of people call it power hour. My teaching, or Tiffany Peterson-ism of it, is I call it morning ritual, simply for the fact that I care more that you establish the habit than the amount of time. And obviously, power hour indicates you devote an hour to it. So your morning ritual is even, say, 10 or 15 minutes. But that ideally you begin your day with yourself and getting centered with yourself, and with, if it's your higher self or higher power, the combination of that, and that you begin your day with you. I mean, how often do you begin your day and instantly, if you have young children, you're instantly into being a parent role? Or how many of us grab our smartphone while we're still laying in bed and we're looking at Facebook or email or Instagram, and the minute you're in email or social media, you're on someone else's agenda. And so having your behavior, this is key with self-esteem, is that your behavior needs to back up the belief system. So if we're walking around saying pretty empty affirmations like I'm worthy and deserving, and I like myself, or I'm valuable, or, I matter, and yet our behavior, there's never time for us, or our whole lives are always about people-pleasing or something of that nature, then we're not in alignment. And so it's having behavior that says, I matter. And so one of those simple habits that can help increase your esteem is to begin your day with some time with yourself. And so what that looks like for me is, you have 3 parts to a power hour, and I do 2 of the 3 every day, and some days I do 3, which is spiritual, mental, and physical. The physical part in terms of an exercise or workout, I do a few times a week. But at least every morning I have a commitment with myself, and that's the piece, is just making the decision, is that I start my day with, for me, prayer and some meditation, some reading, something that, and things that inspire your brain and so forth. So in other words, you start your day out with yourself and getting centered and investing in you. And again, that might only be 7 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But habits are what create our results, and so it's having the habits that will help you have the results. So if you're wanting better self-esteem or more peace of mind in your day, or to not feel so frazzled, is begin your day with some conscious investment in yourself, so you're getting centered in that way. So that's one example. That habit, done repetitively and consistently, helps my clients, helps myself, helps others that apply this principle to feel much more coming from a whole place, even as they start their day, versus that they're coming from a perspective that, they're starting their day with someone else's agenda, or immediately out of bed and rushing into the day. That's one example of something that helps people feel more confident, because, again, consciously and subconsciously, you're communicating that you're valuable and your day begins with you. Versus if there's any time left over somewhere maybe in the day, which, in that mentality, it often doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That's so much more empowering. It also, I love that you're so practical about it, because there's these, the spiritual part can be kind of elusive, kind of like woo-woo, that you need to ground it. The behavior backs up the affirmation. And we know people who walk around with affirmations, The Secret, and just think it. But, yeah, I think anymore I'm wanting more of the, okay, let's get real here. Let's talk about some practical. Love it. Now, you offer on your website, you have products. You're also a keynote speaker in addition to coaching. How is it that people, what's the process for when you take on a client as far as the consultation and then kind of your recommendations on how they work through whatever they come to the table with?
So my process is on my website. It's a Lighthouse Principles. On the coaching tab, there's a form there that says free coaching consultation. So people will go find that or track me down one of the ways, and they fill that out, and we do a 30-minute free consult, and just to get to know where they're at, their needs, their goals, their struggles. And then from there, we discuss either my private coaching or my group coaching. Now, 90% of the time, I recommend people to do a group coaching series, solely for the fact that that's the foundation, and that Success Academy is the name of my group coaching. And it's a hybrid between the self-esteem and sales skill set to help people grow their businesses and increase their sales while they're increasing their confidence. They all go together. And so in that 8 modules, we go through the same content my private clients do. It's just several $1,000s. It's much less expensive. It's available to the masses for a few $100s to go through, versus private coaching is into the thousands of dollars for that customized piece. But some clients are ready for private coaching. They've got a business that's, they're where they're at and so forth. Majority of the time, I don't actually, in my current business model, I don't coach privately very, very much. I'm never working with more than 4 or 5 private clients, most of my coaching these days, because I do so much speaking now. Speaking is kind of the lead out with my company at this point, that my group coaching model is what most people do for coaching. So there are solutions, and again, there are a few clients I take on every couple of months, so it just depends on if that's an alignment for timing and for what they need.
Mm-hmm. Now, what kind of clients do you work with, and who would benefit from working with you through your process?
Yeah, my best are, my ideal client, if you will. They are entrepreneurs or owners of a company, and so they're the one that's directly shaping the company and the income and the result. And so that is who that I work with. Now, that might be a individual that's in a direct sales company. That might be a fellow coach. I coach a lot of coaches on how to create an actual profitable business. I coach a lot of individuals that have, like, say, a salon or a storefront, small to medium-sized business, that type of thing. So it's anyone that has a direct influence to the income and bottom line, or they're running the company and influencing others that are out creating the income.
Okay.
So it's very entrepreneurial-based, I would say.
Okay. Now, there is a video that you have on your homepage, and it's titled "The Law of the Harvest." It's beautiful. I love it. Can you talk about that? Let our listeners know what that is.
So I love that video, and I would invite any of you to go see that. You can see it, The Law of the Harvest. It's at my website, the Lighthouse Principles. You can find it on YouTube as well under Tiffany Peterson. SON is my YouTube channel. I love this teaching, and I love that video. So that video, what it's teaching, the law of the harvest, basically says this. It says that what we plant and nourish in life must bring forward its like fruit. Or in other words, what you're planting and nourishing will bring forward a result as we're faithful and consistent. When I was new to sales, I heard the phrase, or was taught the phrase, the harvest cannot be prevented. So that's universal, that no matter who you are, life and success and results, whether in business, in sports, in Olympians, our results don't always go to the individual that's the most beautiful, the most attractive, the most well-educated, that comes from the best home life or circumstances. life and results go to those that are persistent. And I say in that video the phrase, persistence trumps talent. And so for most of us, well, I would say for all of us, at some point our biggest challenge has nothing to do with whether we're talented, whether we're smart, whether we're good. Even though all of that negative self-talk wants to bubble up and chat in our ear about that, the reality is it's often timing. And it's about, can I be faithful to the process, to the timepiece to get there? The reality is, if any of you are listening to this training, if you made a decision about, say, publishing a book, it's not about if you're smart enough to publish a book or if your message is good enough. You could publish a book if you made the decision and then you were faithful to learning and getting it out there and how to do it, whether you self-publish or go through the route of getting a publisher. But the reality is a lot of people say they want to publish a book, but how many people do it? The persistent do, right? And persistence isn't something, again, like when I said with confidence, it's a choice, it's a habit. It's the same thing with persistence. It's a choice and it's a habit. It's not something you either have or don't have. It's a decision. There's one of my favorite quotes of all time. Tell me what you think of this. It's literally, when I heard this lit me up for months. I blogged about it. It was in every keynote talk. It still shows up in many keynote talks. But it's this simple phrase or thought that says this: doing isn't difficult, deciding is. It's by a gentleman named Foster Hubbard. Doing isn't difficult, deciding is. Right? Isn't that so true? Like for me, like being exercise, for instance. Exercise is technically not very hard. I mean, sure, you can push it to levels it gets hard. But getting out and even going on a walk or going and doing the treadmill or riding a stationary bike or doing some yoga, that isn't hard for most people. Now, some of you might have pain doing it, and that might be hard in that way. But the real bigger challenge is the decision. I was sitting, I should exercise. Oh, I don't want to. I should make sales calls, and I should go network. I should follow up. I should blog once a week. Man, I really... But the hard part isn't, it's just like most people know they should start their morning with some kind of, like I call it, morning ritual. I'm not the first person to teach that. That's been taught a lot. The real issue is making a decision to do it. Isn't that true?
It's so true. I mean, and plus there's so many shiny things that we could be chasing after, and we do. So,
oh, yeah.
I think that's where the morning ritual is that much more important. It provides you that, I always feel much more clear. And I mean, my morning, I make one decision, and that is to wake up at a certain time in the morning. And that is the only thing that I focus on, because I know after that it will be, putting on my shoes and plugging in the iPod, and everything will kind of flow from that. But making that decision to get up in the morning is probably my catalyst. So that's so true. I mean, it really is, the momentum sometimes.
Right. So back to the law of the harvest, the law of the harvest is that a lot of people may say, for symbolically and literally, begin to plant a garden in May, and then they hit symbolically July or literally July, and it's hot and sweaty. And in May, when they started, they were all thrilled and excited about this new thing, and then they hit their roadblocks, and everyone has them. It's not if you have them that should be of concern or of focus. It's how we navigate them when they come up. So the point being with that teaching is the harvest can't be prevented if you, nourish and take care of and cultivate, like in a business, if you're out actively nourishing relationships and your network and following up with people. We know statistically that most sales transactions take place after a fourth interaction. 60% of them will take place after a fourth interaction. What that tells you is people buy from those they know, like, and trust. And like I said in the beginning, being great in sales is really about being great in relationships. And so if you can follow through, follow up, and nourish on a regular basis and so forth, what that then tends is that with time you will meet with success, right? So it's that teaching is applicable to all of us.
But so often we want to hurry that process. We want to get our proof now. We hurry the relationships. We hurry the selling process. We've all done it. That I like what you said as far as the process, being faithful and to the process, that it is a process, that there is a refinement that has to happen. Otherwise, I mean, maybe 6 to 12 months from then, you'd be like, well, it's what I said I wanted, but I'm not happy.
Well, and what you just said is exactly, it's the same thing. I was just speaking to a group Saturday in a town in Idaho, a training for a direct sales company, and that was one of the key questions, even from one of the top leaders in this group, that was bringing up, is getting there faster, right? The speed piece. And the reality is, you will make sales and you will grow as you go along and so forth. It's just saying that the bulk of your business is again going to be transpiring after a fourth interaction. And that doesn't mean we call someone 4 days in a row, right, to hurry. And it's meaning that as we're growing relationships. And it also, sales has to do, it's, with a couple of variables, your confidence and timing and the relationship building for sure, the questions, the quality of questions you're asking, and price points, right? As part of my coaching, I teach a sales funnel that you need to have a freebie, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 when it comes to price points. So the higher your price point, the more that relationship and what I'm teaching, meaning that 60% will take place of business will be in that 60 percentile of building a relationship with someone is even more so applicable to the higher your price point is. Mm-hmm. But there are times where, like, if say out, for instance, I speak to a group of people and it's their first interaction with me, I offer them, often when I speak, I offer my Sales Mastery Kit that's on my website, and it's a product that's it's under $100, which is what I call a tier 1, anything under $100. Well, a lot of people, because after an hour of a talk, they'll purchase that kit, even if it's a first interaction. So that's also because it's a low-risk price point. They're not purchasing private coaching or a VIP day that, would be a much larger investment. Mm-hmm. They might purchase down the road after now they've, listened and so forth. So it's just timing is a big part of it. And like you're saying, is the patience piece. We all want things faster, and you can do things to influence that. But I promise you, stress, when your faster mindset says, I need this faster, the relationship needs to be faster, the business needs to be faster, this needs to be faster, stress is like repellent to your goals. So when you move into the stress energy and you're now vibrating and coming from a place of your energy is into, this is stressful, it's almost like you're pushing that thing even further away from you. Versus being in a place of peace and acceptance, we're always either in resistance or acceptance of where we're at. Mm-hmm. And resistance is suffering and acceptance is freedom. And so when you're in a space of resistance and stress about, why isn't it happening faster, and oh my gosh, and oh my gosh, and oh my gosh, we're always wanting to be somewhere other than we are. And that's a formula, in my opinion, for misery. Mm-hmm. And it's repellent to the very things that you want. So, I don't know, that's pretty deep itself, but it's true.
It's so true. And I mean, I imagine all of us, I know I've felt that, where you don't even realize you're doing it until you've been doing it for a little too long and you're stressed. And you almost are at that point where you're just like, oh, forget it. And you throw your hands up and then boom, things start happening.
Yep.
Like if we could bypass the part where we're just
why?
Pushing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's literally stress. I mean, have you had the experience where maybe someone you know or in your family or a close friend where they're really hyper-focused on getting pregnant, right?
Yes.
Trying to get pregnant. And oftentimes, then they finally, I get that, the heart-wrenching path. And often you see this thing happen where they go on to, they say, okay, well, we'll just adopt. And they start to down that path, and all of a sudden they get pregnant. Now, not obviously every time, and many people go on to adopt, but the point is when you're so stressed out, and it's the stress of, why isn't this happening? Why is this happening? It's not happening. Why? What? You literally have physiological change in your body. You change your body pH and temperatures and so forth, that it's just fascinating to see how that has a direct influence. I remember that too myself. There was a goal I was heavily after and focused on it. And this friend of mine who I was in a mastermind group with this a few years ago, I was highly focused on hitting an income target for a particular month. And even though that month I went on to perform and achieve more than I'd ever done being in business for myself up to that point, so it's like in one hand I really wanted to celebrate, but in the other hand I was way off my mark of this income target. And as I spoke with her about it, and she does a lot of law of attraction type coaching and that work, and she's in this mastermind group. She said the exact same thing I'm saying in different language, but was talking about how it's repellent often at some level, and oftentimes how her goals happen the very next month after she's had this target, because a lot of times when you just, like you said, you get to this point like, fine, forget it, and you just release it, it's almost then that now it can come to you because you're not so resisting it.
And I love the part that we aren't made to do it alone. And that's why, you know, it is wonderful for, you know, the Lighthouse Principles. I mean, Lighthouse, the idea of a lighthouse. So if people were interested in being part of those group coaches, you know, in your keynote speaking, I'm sure you're booking up very quickly, but, you know, bringing you in to talk to a team and guide them along. What's the best way to reach out to you and find out more about, you know, your platform?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you two ways to do that. If you're looking for a speaker to come into your group, it can be a small group, a large group. I speak to retreats, to conventions, and all numbers and so forth. You can reach out to me. My email is Tiffany Peterson, S-O-N, @me.com, me.com. That's my direct email. If you want more information about my coaching program, you can go to the website, either thelightouseprinciples.com or the group coaching program directly. You can go to SuccessAcademy2013.com, SuccessAcademy2013.com, and there's information. You can also find me on every major social media place, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and so forth, if you're wanting to connect and want more. On YouTube, there's several training videos if you want to go through some training for free and get some exposure and take away some nuggets there. There's lots of good things that are on my YouTube channel already.
Love it. And to our listeners, we will have all those links on the website. I do encourage you to go to Tiffany's website, The Lighthouse Principles, and watch that video, The Law of the Heart. It's beautiful. It sets a really nice tone for what it is that you will learn from Tiffany moving forward. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. I feel like I could just keep talking to you for hours and hours and absorbing more. I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm with you. It's like if you start talking about one piece and that leads to another where it's like, ooh, this is juicy. So again, thank you for having me, and thank you for creating the space where you're sharing valuable content with other people.
Oh, you're so welcome. Love having you. To our audience, thank you for listening. As always, now get out there, build something beautiful. Until next time, take care.